Good afternoon and welcome to Lunchtime Shares, where we add value to people's lives. You can catch us live on YouTube, iTunes, Google Pods, and Spotify, as well as ebizradio.com every other day at 12 o'clock. Joining me today, we have two interesting guests, one all the way from Dubai, one from South Africa, from Podcast Connection. And Raymond Rattey and Eric Gerber is going to be chatting to us about exactly what they do and how to do it better. Guys, thank you and welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks a lot, Kevin.
So I want to kick it off with, tell us, Raymond, I came across your profile on LinkedIn, just looking at, chatting with people and finding more valuable conversations to have with people like yourselves, and how do we add value to people out there doing what we're currently doing right now. And so don't you want to sort of tell us, just give us a bit of a synopsis on where this started, more about what you guys do, and sort of give us a bit of an intro about you?
Sure, yeah. Thank you so much for reaching out to me on LinkedIn. I always love it when I get a message from somebody and somebody wants to connect in the business world. So we're basically, we were both musicians, and music was our lives. We were playing shows every single weekend, and when COVID came, obviously everything came crumbling down, with the shows just dropping one after the next, and we had to quickly diversify. So I came to Eric with the idea, and Eric and I have been working together in the music scene for a long time. We had a YouTube page together, and we worked well together. And I came to him with the idea, and I told him that there's a need for people to want to speak onto podcasts. So we came and we basically got together, and this was just before the serious lockdown hit South Africa, like where you were not even supposed to leave your house. I don't know if you remember that time. And basically what happened is we started building this website together, and obviously no clients, no idea where we're going towards. But yeah, we started Podcast Connection. And Eric, I don't know if you want to maybe go a little bit more into detail of exactly what it is, what we do.
Yeah, sure. So Raymond came to me with a business plan, and he said, Eric, there's this need that we can fulfill, and he's the brainchild behind Podcast Connection. And basically, we did a bit of market research, and we found that there is a need for speakers, coaches, authors, business people to promote themselves on podcasts, essentially, which is the perfect platform for them, especially like authors, where they can kind of give listeners a little taste of what the kind of value that they can offer listeners of a podcast. And what's great is that podcasts have this platform of a very targeted audience. So our clients, basically what we do is we take our clients, we analyze their audience, and we find podcasts that relate to our clients' audience that can not only benefit from the things they have to offer listeners, but that can benefit them in a sense of they speaking to this highly targeted audience that's highly likely to buy whatever they have to offer. And yeah, that's essentially what we do in a nutshell. Is we take people, we find podcasts that suit their niche, and both parties benefit out of it. The podcast benefit out of it because they get content for their show, and our clients benefit out of it because they get exposure for their business or product.
So because I do a lot of leadership stuff, coaching and training, so I would definitely be coming to you and kind of going, guys, how can you help me? How can you put me out there? Because for me, it's also increasing my footprint into the world, and also having exactly that you guys are saying. But to the point around podcasts, what are you guys noticing are the biggest mistakes that people are making? I think when you start out a podcast. Alyssa, I don't know if you guys know Gary Vee, but Gary Vee's like, start a podcast, do this now. It's like, speak to people, stop being afraid, and just who cares if you make a mistake? And I am like I don't know if I'm naive or just really brave. Just went and did that, and it was like, lockdown happened, and it was like, okay, cool. How do we add value to people's lives? Sitting here in this room, kind of going, I need to be able to do something. I can't not do anything, because in in practical, my business is having to be in front of people all the time. So, I was like, okay, well, what's the next best step here? And, so creating a podcast is great and everything, but, I still find that people are scared, and people don't necessarily, like one of the things that I struggled with specifically is like, who the hell's going to listen to me? Like, who wants to listen to Kevin? It's like, what, like, who are you and why should we listen? And I was like, what, just that whole imposter syndrome kind of thing, got over it and kind of just started doing it. But I mean, a lot of people want to know, what mistakes can I avoid? What are you guys coming across? And what are people really, where are the biggest mistakes that people are making when they start a podcast, or they want to get into a podcast kind of environment?
I think if I could take this one, Raymond.
Yeah.
One of my friends, actually, he's also a musician, but he's an entrepreneur. He has a couple of small businesses, and him and his friend wanted to start a podcast. And I think one of the biggest mistakes that I saw them making was they weren't sure they didn't really have a game plan. They weren't sure, number one, who their audience was going to be. They weren't sure how they're going to monetize it, because essentially, a podcast, you want to either use it for one of two reasons. You want to either use it to promote your business, or you want to use it to monetize it somehow, make some money out of it in some way, shape, or form. And what they went about it in the way of like, we're just gonna, talk about a bunch of different topics. It's going to be very broad. It's just going to be called Coffee with Drew and his partner, or I can't remember what the podcast show was. And what I said to them was, just be careful, because there's so many podcasts out there, and the newer podcasts need to be very niche in the way, what they want to focus on, what sort of value are you going to offer your listeners. So the more specific you can be, the better. And obviously you want that specificity to line up with your specific, product, your target audience. So I think one of the things that I notice is that people want to go too broad when they start a podcast. They think, I don't want to exclude anyone out of my audience. Anyone needs to be able to listen to my podcast. But, branding 101 is, the more specific you can be, the higher chance you have of penetrating that market. And I think it goes for podcasts as well.
Yeah. I mean, to that point, when I started, I was kind of going, let's just talk to people and let's like find experts to speak to. And then it sort of evolved into quite specific areas. So on Mondays, we do the Lunchtime Leadership, and we cover everything to do with leadership, from really successful stories to motivation to any tips and tricks that you can actually use as a leader in business. And then on Wednesdays, it's really coaching and helping people like this, in terms of helping people move forward and giving ideas and sharing useful information. And then on Thursdays, we have the Lunchtime Marketing shows, and we strictly cover marketing. And I think, to your point, that in itself has seen the audience specifically tune into those shows as well. But I mean, Raymond, is there something you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I think it's there's a lot of mistakes that people make at the start, but I mean, it's okay to make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes, and when you see it, like a lot of times, as school fees, a lot of times you can learn from your mistakes. So, but what we see a lot of times as well as mistakes is like a lot of businesses will start a podcast and they'll call it a branded podcast, and what they'll do is they'll slam their logo on it and they'll run 3-4 ads on it, and they'll almost make it too much of a marketing effort, and they scare the people off. Like, a lot of people are not even interested in listening to a podcast if they see that it's going to be this branded thing. So the best way that we've seen a lot of people utilize a podcast as a good marketing platform is subtlety. And basically, rather, instead of like even slapping your logo on the podcast of your business, rather try to discuss topics where your target audience are going to listen to those topics, and try to devise a strategy that's going to, I want to almost say, lure in your target audience or your market, and try to give them value. And I always tell people there's two reasons why people listen to a podcast. It's either to be educated or to be entertained. So if you can do both of those, you're in the golden seat. So if you're doing that and sorry, go ahead.
What if you're really bad at entertainment? Because when I'm funny to myself, and I'm like, I think I'm hilarious, but most of the time people are kind of looking like, oh, that wasn't funny. Like, don't do that again. Like. So then it's strictly like just be informative, like share useful information.
Yeah, and I mean both is valuable. You're basically always looking to create valuable content. I mean, there's a saying that goes, content is king. If you can create good content, then you're going to organically gain people to listen to your podcast. People are organically going to share it. People are going to just want to keep on listening. So if you can create valuable content, whether it's entertaining or educating, then once again, you're sitting in the golden seat. And then you have this platform of everybody that's listening to the podcast. You can then eventually sell to them or subtle sell to them. There's obviously all these ways of doing it. So that's definitely another mistake that I see a lot of business-based podcasts or individuals do, is they go too hard at it and they think this is an elevator pitch when they're jumping on a podcast.
Yeah. I hear that completely. And I think, just from doing this so much, I think if I go look at the YouTube videos we've done in just over a year, we've done 256 of these recordings. So it used to be 5 days a week. Last in 2020, it was 5 days a week where we had 5 different conversations, which was, I don't know how people do that. So I was like, no, I cannot. There's just so much effort. There's so much that goes into it. But essentially, one of the mistakes that I came across was that also, if you're going to do it, do a bit of research. Do a bit of, come with something to say, share some valuable stats. If you're going to be sharing information, at least come prepared. Because I've had horrible guests on my show, and then eventually I'm sitting there going, "Oh my Lord, like, why did we do this?" So I think that's also a big mistake that people are making. But to getting back to what you guys do. So just to clarify, you guys get certain niche speakers onto podcasts. Do you ever give advice around how to do this, how to create your own podcast? Can you help people sort of set that up, do more around that?
Eric, do you want to grab this one?
Yeah, well, we don't work that closely with podcast hosts, but we obviously, part of our job is to make sure that the shows that we get our clients on are of a fair value, that it relates to their niche, but also just the quality of the show in general. So we have a lot of research that we've done for podcasts, and we're in the middle of we're busy researching a new kind of line of the business that we want to launch for helping businesses launch their own podcasts, just from kind of what we've learned that podcasts are doing right, what they're doing wrong. And again, that was Raymond's brainchild. He's the one that came up with that idea. I don't know if you want to tell Kevin a little bit more about the branded podcasting idea.
Yeah, so effectively the gap in the market that I saw was there's a lot of businesses here, especially in Dubai, where I'm situated in at the moment, that have a lot of international clients. And I think the great thing about a podcast is as soon as you start producing a podcast and you start promoting it and it gains popularity, it automatically gains you that international footprint. And if you're able to sell a product or a service that can be accessible anywhere around the world, then your podcast has an increasing potential of giving that international footprint. So the whole idea behind a branded podcast is going to a business and telling them, let's help you guys set up a podcast. These are all the benefits. These are all the other businesses that are making use of a branded podcast. You list the few like eBay and Microsoft and McAfee, all these big podcasts that's exploding at the moment, and they're gaining so much PR out of it. They're gaining so much marketing out of it. And you tell them, let's help your business build a podcast. And what we'll do is we'll obviously get a host, American host with an American voice. And obviously a lot of the Americans, I think there's over like 80%, I think it's 78% of podcast listeners in the US, or of the US population is actually podcast listeners. And if you can target that market and obviously get an American voice to cater to them, and you've got your business model, and you're basically, once again, educating your target audience and at the same time selling to them, then it's actually one of the most efficient, low threat level marketing models there is to date.
Yeah, and just to get back to Raymond's point earlier, if you don't mind, Kevin, is also there's a lot of businesses that are jumping on the branded podcast wagon, but a lot of them are, again, they try and just push their brand. Every episode is our brand, our logo, and they almost they create the episodes in such a way where like 50 or 60% of the episode is a sales pitch, and the other 40 is actually giving your listeners value, where it should be more like 90-10. It should be 90% value, and in that way you're building trust with your listeners. People, if the content that you're giving them is properly valuable, they can go home and or go to their work and actually apply that to their everyday lives. They're going to start trusting in your brand and trusting the content that you give them, and then they're a lot more likely to when you do eventually say we're running an offer on one of our products or one of our services, they're a lot more likely to buy what you have to offer, rather than every episode is this is our product, this is our brand. People, they don't want, that's not the reason why people listen to podcasts. People want to learn, or they want to be entertained, as Randy was saying.
Yeah, I think the hard selling, like I specifically tune into podcasts that are that like you say is something that I can use, something that's going to make me think about it. And when people are hard selling on stuff, then I won't follow it. I'm like, if I find something interesting, I will invariably go and check out where can I get hold of you. And I think that's such a vital point, because I think people, that's another mistake people make is they hard sell on everything all the time, and that's just annoying.
Yeah.
So in the markets today, like if you guys are busy with all of this, what are you seeing is really on fire at the moment? So where do you guys, what is really making you curious around being in this space, and what are you seeing happening in the world?
Well, other than the podcast exploding and, like, as the kids used to say, popping off, or as they're saying, I don't know if it's a slang anymore, but everybody's saying it's popping off. And there's obviously so much like explosions going into this podcast field. I think the craziest thing that we're seeing is how creative people are getting at making a podcast successful. And I think one of the best ways that people are doing it is like they're interviewing people that also have a large audience. So let's say, for instance, I've got 40,000 followers, and Kevin, let's say, for instance, you've got 60,000 followers, and I interview you on my podcast. Somewhere there's going to happen this cross-pollinating effect where some of your listeners are going to come over to my following base, and vice versa. And that's the amazing thing that we're seeing also a lot happen. And that's how a lot of podcasts get more listeners, a lot more traction around their brand, is they're doing this interaction. So I think that's what also creates a big need for what we're doing, and placing like our clients onto shows. And especially in the American industry, we always like to look at the Americans as the leading podcasters, because I think there's just such a big, like, once again, explosion happening there of podcasts. So that's what we're seeing. That's exciting happening over there. I don't know if you want to add something, Eric.
Well, yeah, no, I think you pretty much covered everything. I think in terms of especially the interview-based podcasts, because in the beginning there was a lot of narrative-based podcasts. So just one guy or girl sharing their the content they have, the value they have to share to their listeners. And more we see less and less narrative-based podcasts and more interview-based podcasts, where almost every interview is, every episode is a new interview with someone else. And I think, a lot of the podcasts, especially in America, as Raymond is saying, they see the value of getting, high-quality guests who already have a following, and they kind of like leeching off their audience, and it's like a win-win situation in terms of just growing, both parties growing each other.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, in terms of just sharing some valuable tips with the audience today, guys, what do you think are the key sort of things that people should really focus on at the moment, especially when they start out with a podcast, or especially if they want to, get themselves out there and known? What are some of the tips that you can share with us? I mean, you guys have already mentioned a few, but I think just to cover that and sort of reiterate, what are those?
I think first and foremost, before you get started, do the market research, as you were saying as well, Kevin. Do the research, figure out who your audience is. I mean, Raymond and I, before we started Podcast Connection, we paid a good penny, money we couldn't really afford at the time. We paid to get some data and statistics and information about this industry that we're going to be going into, the audience, the type of audience we can expect. And that was invaluable. I mean, that we made that money back, tenfold and more. And I think, if we didn't actually know who we were targeting and what we're going into it, and kind of, creating a strategy around that, I think it would have taken us a lot longer to start seeing a profit from the business. So that's the one big thing I would say. Raymond, do you have anything to add?
I would say networking, man. It's not about what you know. A lot of times it's about who you know. If you're positioning yourself and you're being part of seminars, being part of groups and all kinds of mastermind, all those lovely things that's been throwing around lately, if you position yourself amongst those, sometime or another, you're going to be building up some good contacts. And at the end of the day, those contacts can help you, and you can help them in a good way. So I think networking is very important as well.
Absolutely. And just to add to what you're saying, I was looking at your LinkedIn profile, and give away as much free value as possible. Don't you just want to, like, why? What is that going to give me at the end of the day? If I'm doing this, why does that work so well?
People love free education. I see it over and over and over. I'll see 100,000 people sign up to a newsletter because the person who's giving the free education is authority in their niche, and they are giving some free education, whether it's how to write a successful blog, whether it's to become a successful YouTuber. People buy from people who they want to be like, and I see this over and over on the internet. So if you're giving good value and free value from your expertise, whether you're a rocket scientist or some genius programmer, if you're putting out some free education out there for people, people will eat that stuff up, man. I've seen it over and over.
And just to add to that as well, I mean, in a culture where, everything is, we're in a culture of free, essentially. You can almost get anything for free these days on the internet. And you really need to kind of stand out. And I think in terms of the decision a buyer is going to make before they decide, am I going to actually spend money on this, as opposed to all these other free options, is that, I think the type of value that you give your listeners has a big impact on that decision your buyer is going to make. Am I going to, what I imagine goes through their head is, if he or she is giving this info for me, to me for free, what is the kind of value that I'm going to get when I actually, buy from this person and actually spend money on this product or service. So I think that's a biggie, is that, if your free advice is top notch, that, and your paid advice is even better than that, I think, you're going to hook a lot more clients.
Fantastic. Guys, I love that. And I think, just to reiterate, you speak about start building a resume by speaking on podcasts, which is a really a clever way of actually getting out there and into people's heads and into people's ears, I suppose, and giving free value and creating a strategy. And I think that's a good start, especially if your business, especially if you're a coach and a speaker and you have product to sell. I think that's a fantastic way to start getting out there and really help getting more podcasts chatting about it. I think, and what I love about it is it creates a sense of competition. I mean, I look at eBiz Radio. When I started with eBiz Radio, and this was about 2020, in April 2020, a lot of people who I had been working with didn't have podcast channels. Today, there's about 6 of them that I've worked with that all have podcast channels. So they've all they want to talk, they want to, and everyone does their own thing. And, and I think as just to add for one more tip out of there, if people want to start a podcast or they want to get onto podcasts, is never to go there with the idea that, I don't want to share this because what if someone steals the idea? Or what if, what if I'm giving too much? And I think that's also a big lesson that I've learned, doing this is do it, share, give as much value as you can, because at the end of the day, I mean, the slogan to the show is adding value to people's lives. If we can do that and you can do it more, then why the hell not? And so on that note, guys, how do we get hold of you? Where do we go? How do we get hold of you? How do we say, guys, I need help?
Eric?
You can go over to podcastconnection.org, which is our website. Everything you need to know is on the site. You can contact us through there. You can also contact Raymond at podcastconnection.org if you have any questions. And we've got a ton of services and value added, services that we give people. Just go check it out. Everything you need to know is on there. And
fantastic.
And feel free to add us on LinkedIn.
Yeah, of course.
There we go. Yeah. So, and the LinkedIn addresses will be in the description box below, guys. So go and check it out. Catch the Lunchtime series every Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday with new content to share on all the known podcast channels, which I'm so happy about. So go and check it out, as well as on YouTube at the Lunchtime series. Please like and share. Don't forget to do that. And in the spirit of adding value, go and check out one of the websites that we run, guys, for leadership. It's a complimentary motivation assessment. So all you have to do is click on it, download it, and go and check it out, because it really gives you a great idea on what it is that motivates you. So Eric, Raymond, thank you for your time, guys, and thanks for